Coming up on Hampton Roads Business Weekly, inspiration. We look at big light bulb moments, that spark of ideas that sent people down the path of entrepreneurship.
From a car ride through Suffolk to a mundane board meeting, we'll show you where some local business owners got their inspiration.
Hampton Roads Business Weekly starts right now.
What's up, everyone? I'm Zach Miller.
And I'm Cheryl Tan. This is Hampton Roads Business Weekly, a weekly look at the businesses and entrepreneurs making an impact right here in Hampton Roads.
We want to hear from you. So if you have questions or comments during the show, tweet us at HRBizWeekly.
This week, we're focusing on inspiration. We hear it quite a bit on the show. Someone has a great idea that they turn into a business. But where do those ideas come from?
I sat down with Dusty Williams, the Smoke Detector Man. His company inspects and replaces smoke detectors for landlords and homeowners, and the idea came to him in the middle of a meeting. What is the Smoke Detector Man?
Well, I was sitting in a legislative update about 5 years ago, and we were discussing smoke detectors, and I realized as a property manager that I wasn't following what the code was actually saying. So I decided to investigate, and I ended up creating a business that services the property managers from pretty much the oceanfront to Toronto.
And so while investigating, you find in people's homes things like this. This is actually a smoke detector. I mean,
actually, that is a heat detector.
A heat detector, which they thought was a smoke detector.
Right. It was hand wind up, and it was sold in 1971. It was the only heat detector in the house in a 3-bedroom, 2-story townhouse.
And so and so they think this is a smoke detector.
Yeah.
So obviously a clear problem. So how did you realize how big of a problem this was, and how did you start creating the solution?
So when I first came into the business, we would give out addendums just testing the smoke detectors, and then after I looked into what the actual code says, which says that tenancy and annually thereafter, the owner or landlord is required to give a written certification that all smoke detectors are present, have been inspected in good working order. Well, to do so, you actually physically need to take down the smoke detector, clean it off, replace the batteries. On the back side of the detector is a stamped manufacture date, and all smoke detectors are required to be replaced 10 years from manufacture date. And so with looking through that, that's why the annual certification needs to be done, because every 10 years you need to go in, swap them out. Carbon monoxide is 7. And so I started doing it on nights and weekends, and then it slowly grew from 160 properties the first year to several thousand this past year. And now I hire or employ firefighters on their days off. So I get a full schedule together and create a business through that.
How did you find your first home?
Well, I was in the property management business, or am, and so I started looking at my properties. I informed the owners and decided to create the business from that.
And they saw this as something that they didn't want their maintenance guys to do. They didn't have the 6 or 8 foot tall ladders, and you saw it as a way for you to get those folks in and to be able to change it and do that.
Correct. I mean, most of the people that employ us are absentee owners. The property managers, like you said, don't carry a 4 foot, 8 foot, 12 foot ladder, nor do they carry replacement smoke detectors or carbon monoxide detectors or 9-volt batteries.
I think a lot of folks who are thinking about starting a business are looking for something that is nowhere near this, but this completely solves a problem. How did you know that this was a problem that you were going to love enough that you could go and become very successful with?
Well, I mean, every day you wake up, there's 2 or 3 fires in an apartment or a rental property, and since we've started, I've had multiple people that have called me up and said, hey, you know, my tenant caught the kitchen on fire, they were able to get out, you had just certified the property, and for me that is one of the biggest rewards.
So you're saving someone's life, basically.
Absolutely.
How'd you come up with the name?
Smoke Detector Man, you know, keep it simple, stupid, so I just thought it was the best way to go, and our motto is we are saving the world one smoke detector at a time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dusty.
No problem. Thank you.
Welcome back. Inspiration. It can come in many different forms. A few weeks ago, we spoke with Maya Holohan, owner of 6 bridal stores across Hampton Roads. We talked with her about her initial inspiration to open a second location and why she chose downtown Suffolk.
Kevin Hughes, Director of Economic Development with the City of Suffolk. Maya Holohan, owner of 6 bridal shops in Hampton Roads. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Maya, in January of 2014, I know you made your first foray into the City of Suffolk.
Yes.
Why?
So it was the encouragement of one of my managers. I knew I wanted to expand, and she loves Suffolk and encouraged me to get in the car with her and drive out there one day. And we drove the entire city, and the last stop was the downtown area, the historic area. And I got out of the car and I was just like, I'm gonna put a bridal salon here. It belongs downtown here. I loved the charm.
Kevin, you're listening to this and you're listening to the success, and you maybe hear that
Often, but then you also hear about the challenges of doing business in the City of Suffolk. So talk about that.
Well, I think, the city of Suffolk is very large. We're 430 square miles. There's a lot of territory to look at and consider when you're considering opening a business. And so specifically where Maya set up shop in the historic downtown Suffolk comes with a lot of character, a lot of stories. It's very unique and it has some stories to it, and that's something that we support and we cherish in the city of Suffolk. And so we've been working a lot of different programs. We have incentives for facade improvements for property owners. We've been investing. We just built a brand new municipal center. And so we're trying to work from a foundation up, specifically in the historic section to keep what's precious there, to save the historical buildings, introduce developers who want to revitalize, introduce new people to live down there, and then work with retailers such as Maya who understand that, embrace it, accept it, and just mesh very well with it. I think retail is becoming such an art form, especially at the independently owned level, to where you're creating an experience, and you have the ability to do that locally versus reporting to headquarters somewhere else. And so she's a shining example of somebody who does that. And so we're so fortunate to have her specifically in downtown, so you have someone who gets it.
So Maya was encouraged to take a look at Suffolk.
Yes.
But what kind of encouragement would you give to other entrepreneurs within Hampton Roads to maybe take a chance?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's an understanding of what your business is,
Right.
an understanding of who your customer is and how to find that customer and find the next customer. And understanding what your marketing plan is, how you fit into that location. You hear location, location, location. And the beauty of where she's sitting is it's on Main Street. And it literally goes all the way from North Carolina, almost up to northern Suffolk. And so there's a lot of vehicles going up there, but how do you capture that vehicle? How do you make them stop? How do you come in? And that's really the niche of your business and how you fit into a setting. And so it's a lot of homework to grab the customer that you have and grab the next customer as well, and then work with the different programs at a city level or state level or federal level to enhance that initiative.
So if somebody out there wants to ask you questions or learn more, where can they reach you?
Probably the easiest way to remember is our website at yessuffolk.com,
Okay.
and all of our contact information is there. My phone number is 757-514-4043, and that's my direct line. I'd be happy
Thank
to
you
talk to anybody.
so much. And lastly, Maya, any last words for someone out there who's trying to figure out a way to grow, maybe a different way to go, an entrepreneur who wants maybe a different path?
Sure. I would say research, do a lot of research. Keep the possibilities open. It's sort of like when a bride comes into my store, I say, you need to keep an open mind because you're probably going to end up in a gown you wouldn't consider for yourself. That was Suffolk for me because I never saw myself in Suffolk until, I seized the opportunity to do some research and to visit the city. And once I got downtown, I knew that's where we were going to be.
Right. Open your eyes.
Yes, open your eyes.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
We have more Hampton Roads Business Weekly coming up, but first, another edition of the TAN Plan.
How do I get my story in the news? It's a question I get asked all the time. And in today's TAN Plan, here is what I tell people. Number one, what's your story and why would a reporter be interested in sharing it? A reporter that covers consumer news wants a very different type of story than a sports reporter. So figure out what your story is and figure out how to interest that reporter and that reporter's audience. Number two, what makes your story relevant right now? Pitching a story on the most innovative Halloween costumes only works at one time of year. And finally, what qualifications do you have to be the expert in this story? Address these questions and you have a greater chance of success. Want more media tips? You can find me at CherylTanmedia.com. Welcome back to Hampton Roads Business Weekly and the one thing entrepreneurs do that lead to their success. We're here now with Frank Tommaso, the Chief Innovation Officer at Blue Sky Realty. Thanks so much for talking with us today.
Good morning, Cheryl. Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be on the show. Thank you.
Thank you. And I asked you to list how many businesses you've started. I know you're a serial entrepreneur, and I have here 10. So how did you get your start as a business person?
So the first real business that I had, I was 22 years old and I moved to Virginia Beach and I bought a restaurant. I had saved $20,000 and I got the owner to finance $250,000. I don't know how I pulled it off. I was 22 years old, but it happened. You know, it happened. I put my mind to it and I made it happen. From that point, I had several restaurants and got into the real estate business about in 2004, I believe it was.
So you had 4 restaurants, Albies,
Yes.
in Virginia Beach, and you went from restaurants to real estate. How did you make that shift and why?
Well, it's always real estate's always been a passion of mine. From when I was a kid, my dad's best friend was a real estate broker, and I would go sit with him in open houses, and it was just something that I always wanted to do. The restaurant was a stepping stool for me to get into the real estate business, to allow me to get into it successfully.
What would you say has been the challenge in starting all of these businesses and having them grow successfully?
So the biggest thing that I've learned in all of this is having the right why. Really concentrating on your why, because when I first got into it, my why was skewed. My why was money, and I quickly attained the wealth that I was looking for, and I found myself very, very empty. It wasn't until I accepted Christ 4 years ago that I rechanged everything in my direction in my life and the focus of my company. We changed the vision, the mission statement to make good things happen for other people. Our company's centered around that. It's around helping people like a Starbucks barista go from a $9 an hour job to a $100,000 a year job. We have an academy that we look for the right people and we place them in our academy. We train them on being real estate agents, and we have people that are selling 5 houses a month that have never sold anything 7 months ago. So it's really awesome just to watch them grow. Now, the biggest thing about it is that they've got to have a fire inside them.
And we've been talking about entrepreneurs coming up to both of us and saying, it's not working, something's not working, and our businesses are not growing the way we want. What do you tell them? What kinds of steps would you say to them that they need to take in order to find success?
So the most important thing is know your numbers, right? You always hear that, know your numbers. Okay. Have a system and process, have everything well defined. But showing up, you gotta show up. 80% of the time, I tell my son this I've got 2 boys and a daughter, and I tell them all the time, 80% of the time is just showing up. You look at these government contracts, and when you look at them, you see that nobody even participated. One person participates in it, and they win the contract just by showing up, and they win millions of dollars in contracts because nobody else took the initiative to show up. So that's the number one thing. Show up. Wake up every morning. Go to work. Put a smile on your face. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. Show up, and chances are you'll win just by showing up.
This segment is called The One Thing. So what would you say is the one thing that has led to your success?
You got to claim it. You got to claim success. It's something that you have to have your mind set on that you're going to do. It's not if I succeed. It's I'm going to succeed, and these are the steps that I'm going to take to make it happen. And don't stop. You're going to fall. You're going to trip, but you need to get up and learn. I always say the mistakes are the tuition that you pay for success. So that's the mistakes. They cost you money, but you better learn from those mistakes. You get right back up and keep on trucking. And if you really put your mind to something, I believe that we as humans have the ability to persevere and to make it successful.
And you have. So congratulations, Frank Tommaso. Thanks so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
In today's world, a rating on Facebook or Yelp could make or break your business. Have you ever received a negative rating? Well, have you actually ever followed up with those people and made sure that that rating was correct? Or if it was correct, what you could be doing to make it better? This week's Zack Hack is simple. When someone rates you, either positive or negative, reach out to them and figure out what made their experience good or what made their experience bad. A couple weeks ago, someone had actually rated my business Hatch at a 1 star, but I had never met this person. So I reached out to that person and said, hey, I see that you've rated my business at a 1 star. I'd love to learn what happened. What did I find out? This person accidentally gave me a 1 star and accidentally rated my business negatively. But by reaching out to this person, they actually now engage with almost every single one of my posts in a positive way that helps reinforce my brand. So this week's Zack Hack is very simple. When someone rates you, positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Reach out to them and figure out exactly what happened. For more information, head on over to startwithhatch.com. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Hampton Roads Business Weekly. We are here with Nat Pierce and Josh Pierce of The Briefcase. What is The Briefcase?
The Briefcase is a software platform that we developed that allows entrepreneurs and small business owners to be able to access business attorneys and high quality documents.
All right, so you guys actually are lawyers and you have a boutique firm here in town. How did you guys come up with the idea to take the old ways of legal essentials and put them online?
Well, what we found from representing a lot of different companies is you have a good number of businesses locally here and in larger Virginia who are underserved and underprotected for basic legal needs. And you have a scenario where the legal industry is become kind of cost prohibitive for those types of businesses, and things like basic legal needs like a owner joining with another partner and having an agreement that controls their relationship is considered a luxury for some of those companies, and they neglect it and they don't choose to seek out counsel with respect to that, and instead use Google and put on their own lawyer hat. And you can just anticipate the negative consequences that flow from kind of a flimsy foundation that creates for the business.
So you guys have been developing for months, maybe even for a year. What have you learned throughout that process on actually building something that you guys aren't necessarily experts in, the technology side?
Find people that you trust and that you communicate well with. I think we're on our 3rd developer, and now we have a great relationship, and we ask for things and things are done on time, and we regularly schedule meetings. Before, the first developer we hired to work on it had a different way of communicating, and we kind of said go, and then we'd check back, and the product wasn't there.
Yeah, it wasn't there. How are you guys vetting that team to know that they can get the job done? Obviously it hasn't worked until the 3rd time, but what if someone was watching and has an idea and is looking for a technical team, what type of vetting would you guys recommend them going through to make sure that those hiccups don't happen again?
Well, I would definitely recommend putting together the advisors that we have now to be able to vet those technical developers, being able to give us perspectives at various levels of expertise, whether it's front-end UI, UX design, or back-end application development. We've had to find...
So advisors that know how to do that specific technical thing?
That's right.
Go after those people?
Yeah, and having those advisors be able to consult for us to be able to find the team that we're looking for.
But also, we ask our potential users what they want the service to do. We had a phone call right before Christmas where the developers were trying to push back a feature that our users desperately wanted, and we just had to put our foot down and say, no, we need this with our launch that's happening in February. It absolutely has to be a part of the product. So listening to those users has been really vital.
So innovation as a whole is taking an old industry and creating something new. And what's difficult, I think, with kind of traditional law firms is they scale with more people. Now you guys scale with technology. How is innovation going to change the legal world for the coming years?
Well, I think there's a couple variables that you have. From the 70s till right around 2008, the size of a law firm in terms of just number of lawyers grew exponentially. And with that grew lawyer compensation. Then you had things like LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer come onto the market. And now we're just starting to see some of the data associated with those services. LegalZoom publishes some of its own data, and there's things that suggest that a large majority of form documents that are downloaded online are filled out incorrectly by the end user. So we wanted to solve that problem of, the traditional legal model of a singular lawyer dealing with a business owner and having a relationship, sitting down with them, figuring out a custom solution. How do we use what these new technologies have developed? How do we kind of merge those two into a singular product offering for consumers?
Great. Josh, Nat, the Briefcase. Best of luck.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks.
That wraps up another edition of Hampton Roads Business Weekly. Like us on Facebook and Instagram at HR Business Weekly.
There, you will find segments from previous shows, plus some great behind-the-scenes pictures and videos. For Hampton Roads Business Weekly, I'm Zach Miller.
And I'm Cheryl Tan. We'll see you next week.
Hampton Roads Business Weekly, sponsored by Regent University and produced by ABC 13.